Welcome, everyone. It's 6:05, and I'm calling this meeting of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission to order. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce our newest commissioner. We're happy to welcome Rhonda Tamplin Watts to the commission. Welcome, Rhonda. Happy to have you. And our next item of business on our agenda is approval of minutes from the August 8th meeting, but those minutes were not distributed in time for everyone to have the opportunity to review them. So we will, and that's on me. We will move that to our October meeting and approve the set of minutes from August and September and October. We have no old business at this time, but I do want to note that we're now on our agenda keeping a place for old business in case some things come up that we need to discuss at a following meeting. And that takes us right to discussion items. And the first item under Roman numeral 4 here is events and initiative progress, updates, and debrief. And since we have a new member here, I'll just explain a little bit about what we intend to do with that time. That's an opportunity for commissioners to report on standing events that we have, initiatives that we're currently undertaking, things that are already kind of in progress and committed to. It's just an opportunity for commissioners to share with other commissioners who may not be as closely involved in those events and initiatives how things are going. So does anyone have anything they'd like to report on under item A? We do have the upcoming, oh, sorry, Lou, please.
Yes, please, very short. Just a update. On September 1st, I met with Ms. Mindy Tremblay. She's the executive director of Carlisle's Employment Skills Center. You may recall we talked about the Skills Center in a previous meeting. She hosted a visit to the facility on Hanover Street, and I want to publicly thank her and Dawn Smith for welcoming me to the facility. Their orientation to the many impactful services the center provides to young adults was eye-opening and helpful to the commission. She's also invited the commission to have a tour or visit the facility sometime in the future. Okay, so I just wanted to put that back out there. I did actually promise that I would also come back. So just to get that out there, but good meeting. I'll discuss more detail in our commerce report. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you. Something I know we have on the agenda in the future, not this agenda, but the proverbial agenda, is Colleen Murphy's visit in October. That was kind of not something I was leading. So does anyone else have anything to report to the group about that event?
Just that she is scheduled to be with us on Thursday, October 13th. I think that's a Thursday. Give me 1 second. Yes, Thursday, October 13th. And we'll need some folks to sort of plan some content around what that looks like for her to come and sort of continue a conversation that we began with her, I guess, at the beginning of the year. I guess in planning of that would also need to plan what time. So I know that is also, council also meets that day. So we'll need to determine whether or not we want that to be earlier or how we want that to look.
My understanding was that she would be a speaker in lieu of thinking about Race Thursdays.
Correct.
So would it be appropriate for that team to plan the content?
Sure.
Yeah.
Great.
Also reporting out on the $1,000 that was earmarked for the pop-up, the back-to-school pop-up at Memorial Park on August 20th. It was a very successful event. I believe over 300 backpacks were given away. to children in the area, and I believe about 15 youth or so also received either a free haircut or a free back to school hairdo to go back to school. So there was some recreation and community building, and certainly grateful for this body to be able to support that work in that way.
I'd just like to add, I stopped over to that event, and kids not only had backpacks, but they had folders and binders and notebooks, and they were really excited about it. So I just wanted to add that.
Anything else before we hand the floor over to Lou and Jerry?
Can I ask just one question? Wasn't there I probably got my wires crossed, wasn't there an educational event scheduled for tomorrow somewhere here? September 13th? I guess not.
You might be thinking
If
of
not,
October 13th.
Maybe I'm thinking the October 13th thing. My notes say September, so it's part of my mistake. No worries. Thanks.
Mercury is in retrograde. So, all right, Lou and Jerry, the floor is yours to give us a presentation on your draft report on commerce and economy.
Okay, great. And Jerry, jump in anytime you want. Jerry and I have discussed offline a number of our concerns that echo what we've come up with in here with regard to the youth. So when we get to that section, Jerry, definitely feel free to jump in as well. This is put together a draft set of recommendations. These are not final. One reason why they're not final is because I want all your input, but there's still some folks we want to circle back to. I want to circle back to the new Chamber of Commerce president and CEO. Most of the report that pertains to them was shared with Michelle, the previous president and CEO, and she was fine with it, but we decided to circle back and discuss this again, and I don't have a date yet for that meeting, but we'll have it before the report is over. We'll get to have that meeting. So I want to start with some background, and again, I've sort of fiddled with the name of the bin or the basket that we want to call it: commerce, business, and business training and education. It turns out training and education, as we've said many times, is interwoven in all the initiatives that we're talking about here. So we can decide if that name should stay. But just some background first before we get into the meat of the report. As of October 2020, Black residents had the highest unemployment claims, 10.2% in the area. Pacific Islander or Asian residents had the lowest claims in Cumberland County. New data is not yet available post-COVID, but I expect our report will contain new data, which should actually be much improved in my view, but we'll see. That's a guess. In February 2020, the TRC identified the Carlisle Area Chamber of Commerce, which I call the Chamber, as fundamental to its fact-finding efforts to advance racial justice, foster greater inclusiveness, and eliminate prejudice within our business community. The Chamber of Commerce has some 700 business members, some with internal diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts of their own. All that's great news. The previous CEO and president also found it problematic because there wasn't a proper accounting of what efforts were successful, how things were working, and people didn't appear to be pulling together. And it's just because you have these independent businesses and they have their own programs. So one of the weaknesses in the Chamber's knowledge, institutional knowledge, was the fact that they hadn't really pulled everything together. The Chamber has emphasized support primarily for women and veterans. And you'll see that echoed again in some remarks I'll have later, and is not explicitly focused on the African American business community. And that's in quotes in the report because it's specifically from the Chamber. It's not my language. they realize this particular shortfall and have acknowledged it. Due to several circumstances, including COVID-19 pandemic, the Chamber could not supply quantitative business metrics to support our mutual concerns that we have here within the TRC. But they, like us, um, believed that there was enough anecdotal information and information on hand to show that blacks were underrepresented in small and medium businesses and in commerce in general in the area. I prefer to have business metrics, and in fact, the Chamber agreed that those metrics are important if they could gather them and curate them to show where we are and then show progress in the future. In May of this year, the Chamber held a formal DEI training for its members by a certified master trainer and facilitator, Ms. Deborah Vereen. I also spoke with her. She's a co-founder of Diversity and Inclusion Professionals of Central Pennsylvania. I think she's a limited liability company, so there's always money involved with her. But she lent some of her expertise and thoughts, and they're sort of interwoven throughout the report. Now, commission members here have acknowledged that preparing our young people for the local job market and perhaps running medium or small businesses requires education and training. So at our last meeting, we discussed the Carlisle Employment Skills Center, which in that discussion precipitated or instigated our visit to the center that I mentioned earlier. The Employment Skills Center is focused on offering free education and training that leads to employment opportunities for the disadvantaged, disaffected, and disenfranchised. Like many organizations of this type, it is underfunded given its mission. And that came from the executive director, and it was pretty obvious when I received the mission brief that was the case as well. The ESC is a 501c3 level funded nonprofit organization that manages targeted programs for youth and young adults with some assistance from the Pennsylvania Department of Education. Contrary to popular belief, it is not an employment or job assistance office. There are other offices here in the borough that handle that, employment office, career link, and the like. So in our previous discussions, we were unsure on the mission of the ESC. So we were able to kind of clear that up and bring that into more focus. The Employment Skills Center primarily serves young adults aged 17 to 21 in the Carlisle area. This is mostly a function of the Pennsylvania Department of Education, where they receive the lion's share of their funds. That is the target demographic for those funds. There is tremendous interest, from what I can gather, within the ESC to go younger than age 17, as we had discussed in our previous meetings. But they're sort of locked in at the moment. Locked is probably a bad term. Their emphasis has got to be where the folks that donate money to them and their grants say it needs to be, and it's that 17 to 21 area. The ESC's data show barriers to area employment hit low income and single parent families the hardest. Low income 32%, single parent families 18%. Targeted programs include job readiness, employability, digital literacy and computer skills, healthcare, forklift training, customer service and sales, an exciting initiative, which I'm going to talk about later, called the Success Academy for Women and Girls. The Academy teaches empowerment, job readiness, and life skills. It has no age limit because of how it's funded. It is currently focused on women and girls only because that's its funding sources have requested that be the emphasis. As I said, Ms. Mindy Tremblay, the executive director, indicated that they would be willing to expand that particular academy to include men and boys, provided that the funding were there. That gets closer to some of the issues we were talking about our young people younger than age 17, regardless of their gender or race, having a opportunity to work in the borough or around the borough and get some work experience and some training on how to hold a job, how to manage finances, and the like. So in collaboration with the Chamber of Commerce and the Employment Skills Center, the TRC has identified the following systemic challenges to promoting diversity and improving racial equity and access to local business and commerce resources. And this is an old story, but it was reinforced by my meeting with the ESC on September 1st. Financial and credit is a big challenge. We mentioned earlier that the interest rate for blacks for business loans, small business loans, small and medium business loan, is around 7 to 8%. That's almost just untenable. For whites, it hovers somewhere between 2.54 and 7.02, depending. So that is illustrative of some of the problems and the reason why there aren't many black businesses. But there are even more issues: discrimination, lack of support from the African American consumer. That is true. As painful as it might be for me to realize, it is something that has been echoed by the persons on the street, average people, as well as the chamber, and I heard the same thing in the Employment Skills Center. Mentoring, lack of it, entrepreneurial, financial literacy, and life skills education and training shortfalls, sustainment, consistent work for clients, and community support. So all those are challenges. So moving on to the draft recommendations. These recommendations are mutually supporting. They're not collectively exhaustive because much of what we're doing is still fact finding. I'm learning as I go along. I still need to talk to a number of other organizations. I will present 4 main recommendations. They are the result, as I said, of the fact finding so far. It would be remiss if I did not thank the Carlisle Area Chamber of Commerce and the Employment Skills Center and community members for their insights and perspectives on the challenges that we face, specifically the relative underrepresentation by blacks and other minorities in entrepreneurship in small and medium business. Okay, so recommendation number 1, formalize, i.e. create a program of record with the Carlisle Area Chamber of Commerce, Employment Skills Center, Downtown Carlisle Association, and Cumberland Area Economic Development Corporation on community DEI issues. I have not reached out to CADIC, and the reason why I haven't, and we can discuss it here later, is I've stayed within the borough. My fact finding is within the borough as I understand it, and CADIC is a county entity, so I did not go there. But throughout my discussions, CADIC came up several times, so I chose to put them in the recommendation. Lead an expanded coalition of stakeholders to explore and support initiatives to identify local job and business opportunities, enhance the quality of targeted and largely independent efforts to promote success, address gaps, and enable transformative change. This is a lot from the chamber that I sort of mentioned before. This recommendation is aimed at elevating awareness and promoting actionable solutions. Recommendation 2, collect, curate, and formally report data and information about Black and minority-owned businesses in the Carlisle area. The Chamber has agreed in principle to share business metrics regularly once they start creating them, such as the number of business licenses issued, identify small and medium business minority businesses, which they were not able to do with confidence, and perhaps publish it in some sort of news section in their business directory, which is an online publication mostly, but I do think there's also a printed publication. So in our next meeting with the chamber, I want to take that a little further and see if the current CEO and president is still able to do that at some point. Again, This would then give more transparency to the problem, perhaps make it more convincing to some that there is a problem, and then we would be able to track progress over time. This data is essential to evaluate and document progress and chart a direction, in my view. Report progress and challenges in a public meeting to the Borough Council. That's another thing the Chamber, once they were getting on their feet post-COVID and they had gone through a leadership change and the like, indicated a willingness to be able to do at some point is to actually give a report to us on what they've done and what they see from their perspective. Recommendation number 3, enhance, incentivize, and strengthen job and business education, outreach to individuals, particularly our youth, as Jerry and I were discussing, from the Black community, leveraging existing community and regional resources such as the Chamber, the Employment Skills Center, the Downtown Association, and other influencers in new ways. This recommendation would include borough outside agency funding to expand the ESC's Success Academy for women and girls to include men and boys. My understanding is that the ESC has been to council before and has received limited monies in the past, not recently, but in the past for their initiatives. The executive director was quite knowledgeable on how to write these proposals and how to write grants and the like, and they literally sustain themselves off of that kind of support. By working collaboratively and implementing a communications and information strategy to message the community, these organizations can empower communities of color to participate fully in the local business market and promote a sense of belonging. That theme was echoed by the Chamber as well as the Employment Skills Center as this sense of belonging. And I think early in our discussions in the TRC, I know when I came aboard, I was harping on the value of objective data and metrics, but the TRC made it very clear to me, and I certainly concur, that there's a lot of other kind of anecdotal information and atmospherics, such as what we've done in the thinking about race discussions and the like. It's difficult to capture in metrics, but it's certainly part of the atmospherics here in the borough that are a challenge for us and for some an obstacle, particularly this belonging. The ESC made it clear that most people don't know what they do. They also, in Truth in Advertising, indicated that the name Employment Skills Center is sort of a misnomer and can be somewhat misleading. So I suggest we might change that. Of course, I got the big smile. That's a lot of work to do, but certainly communicating what the ESC does to the community at large would be helpful. It doesn't cost a whole lot, but the ESC made it clear that their limited funds, they do very little advertising. Most of their monies go to actually helping people, teaching and training. So they admit they have not done a good job communicating to the general public what they do and what they don't do, and they might enlist some support from us in that regard. It doesn't cost a whole lot, but we might help in that regard. So this recommendation is part of that. Also, the ESC has worked with Hope Station. They also made that very clear that they have done so. And one of the pieces of information or thoughts that have come out of those relationships is that Black people in Carlisle would like to stay in their own neighborhoods and are hesitant to venture out to a place like the ESC. So in the body of the report, in the footnotes, and I won't go through the details because I sent you a copy and you can see it, they have tremendous statistical data on who they see, who they help by race, age, how they help them. They also track these youth and young adults after they receive this training. When they go on to deployment, they track their successes and failures and where they go to work. Now, all this detail is what I think is useful, but frankly, the reason why they have to do it is because it's demanded by the Pennsylvania Department of Education if they're going to continue to receive this funding. So they have substantial data, detailed information, and I have some of it listed here and can look at it. But they were pretty sure they don't see as many blacks as they should. That it was underrepresented even in the people that they help. You don't see a lot of blacks, and part of it is because no one knows what the ESC is, and you have to go down to Hanover Street, up to Hanover Street, down to Hanover Street to get there and learn. And they actually believed that was an obstacle. That was one reason why there weren't more blacks participating in that program. Recommendation number 4, create a summer youth internship program to promote sustained interest in job and career opportunities in the borough's central departments. I must admit, this is something that I've been thinking about, so it just really didn't come from anywhere else. One of the things I've noticed since my return to Carlisle, and I noticed it before that, is that the average person on the street doesn't know how Carlisle works. I said the same thing in D.C., so it's sort of a piggyback off of something else that I've been working on. But how does the borough function? And moreover, how does the county function? Who are the agencies? What do they do? What are the services provided? What is expected of a citizen and the like? Some of this came up in the Employment Skills Center in their life and lifestyle training. And they want to do more with this particular thing too. It's making our younger people, and frankly some of our young adults and arguably some older adults, more aware of what services exist and what their responsibilities are versus what the borough's responsibilities are and the like. So this sort of kind of gets to that, this internship for youth. So in collaboration with the Carlisle Area School District, identify prospective students and perhaps offer educational credit for their participation in this internship. Now, the Carlisle Borough or the Carlisle Area School District has announced an initiative that involves requiring students for their graduation from high school to take a financial literacy course. And my understanding, and please jump in, I know you probably know more, Doreen. My understanding, I have not reached out to the area school district for the reasons I mentioned earlier, and tried to stay within the borough purview and not go there. But this came up at the ESC discussion. They work closely to the degree that they can with the school district on precisely this kind of thing, workshops and the like, but it's hit and miss based on whatever funding they have and other things. So even the school district has evidently for some years recognized a need for this financial literacy at a young age. There may be a way where the borough can somehow incentivize that through the ESC and kind of tighten that bond. My understanding is that it's likely to occur sometime in the future as a requirement within the school district, but right now it's an elective, my understanding, for folks wanting to go into the business area or some of the IT areas and the like. So this recommendation, in my view, could stave off the expansion of shadow and informal economic activity that occurs in Carlisle, some of it illegal. Within the black and disadvantaged community specifically. Further, it could, in my view, emphasize, like we had the Amani Festival. This is an anecdote, it's not in the report. My understanding is that the Amani Festival, and I didn't even know what it was, so I had to get caught up, get smart on it, and so I know enough to be dangerous, so you guys help me out. But my understanding is that it cost $300 to have a space and sell your wares at the Amani Festival. Some adults paid that money. Now, we had some issues with rescheduling this year, I understand, but I've been to it before. I just didn't thoroughly understand how it worked. This included our youth. There were youth that I spoke to that, hey, I like to sell cupcakes. I like this, I like that. I'm talking like 12, 13, 14. You know what I'm talking about, right? You were there with me. They had to pay $300 for a lot to sell. Now, That's basically saying you're not selling. Right? We might be able to do something about that. I don't know if we can, but we might be able to do something about that. The ESC made it pretty clear to me that the folks that they do talk to, the young people they talk to, and this is like, yeah, in that academy, they have some that are younger than 17. Well, they ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do? And invariably, the majority of the folks say, I want to be an entrepreneur. And when she said that, I just laughed. And I didn't, it wasn't disrespectful. And she laughed with me at the ESC. And I said, I've heard that before. But she said, you know what? They haven't the inkling of what training is required and education is required to get a business off the ground. They have the drive. They have the want, the desire, without the skills. So it would seem to me that part of our recommendation would be to work to remove any obstacles, even if it's not a policy or anything. But if we could reduce the number of obstacles for our young people to participate in something like the Amani Festival or other things. I know there's some pop-up activities and they're there, but if you compare who's at the pop-up versus the Amani Festival, no comparison. I've been to several of those, so I know that's
Lou,
the same.
there's no tiered fee.
My understanding there is not. So I know in 2 cases, really in 1 case, I suspect the second case, what was done was a child partnered with an adult. They paid the $300 and they sold, in addition to whatever the adult was selling or marketing, there were cupcakes that young children had sold. And they just kind of went in with because they couldn't pay the $300. Now that's someone in my mind, the individual, who showed a little bit of creativity and drive, right? But how many are turned away because they don't have it? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. So these initiatives, these recommendations are mutually supportive. We may not be able to do all of them, but I do think that we've captured the essence of some of the problem, some of the challenge. And if we could do anything to expand to the young boys, the ESC has said that they're willing to do that, but like anything else, a lot of people are willing, but the funding and sustained support has to be there. Without the sustained support, it becomes you did it once and then you didn't do it anymore. And that's one thing that the ESC says, yeah, we've come and we've even received money from the borough. I said, how often do you go? He's like, well, I can't remember last time we went. And we understand that that's difficult. You keep coming back and asking. At some point, you have to be able to sustain on your own what it is you're doing. You can't always keep asking for support. But this is where we are so far in our report. There's still, I think, much to do. I know time is marching on. And Jerry, I want to give you an opportunity to add or elaborate on what you said.
I think you did great. I defer.
Okay. So fun stuff. I'm still learning. Let me know if going to the county, the CADIC, is something we want to do. Let me know if going to the school district. The school district, I think, is easier because the ESC is already got a good dialogue going with them, so I could sort of glom on. We don't have to be the lead or anything, but just something to think about. All right, that concludes my report. Thanks.
Thank you, Lou.
Thanks, Lou, for that report. Just briefly, I know just from my personal experience that the vendor fee for the Amani Festival was $100, and that there was spot on the application that if somebody could not afford the $100, that they would that they were willing to work with people. So it's worded some kind of way. So that's the Amani piece. And then a question about Employment Skills Center. Did they mention, I heard the mention of funding from the Pennsylvania Department of Ed. Had they mentioned any funding from like the Department of Labor or the Workforce Investment Board or Workforce Innovation
Not
Opportunity?
in my notes, but our meeting went for 3 hours, and at some point I stopped taking notes and simply tried to gather as much information as I could. I got the impression that the ESC would be more than willing to provide a list of where all of their funding comes from. In fact, it's probably public, but no, I don't recall that.
So the reason that I'm asking is um, just thinking about recommendations that come to Borough Council. There, and I understand the thought behind staying centered on the borough and not even having the conversations with KDIC. But because the way that this state distributes funding for employment through the Department of Labor and Industry, through their design of workforce investment boards throughout the Commonwealth, that Carlisle is covered by one of those regions and serviced at the Career Link. And part of that service includes youth programming. So they're mandated to provide these services for Carlisle youth. And fear is probably too strong of a word, but my concern would be that if we have mentorship and training and workforce readiness sort of programming at Employment Skills, and we're asking the borough to support those initiatives, how do we make it so that how can we either leverage money that's at CareerLink for those programs, or how can we, in other words, seeking for the borough to fund work that's already funded at a state level for the same population is where I would be a little bit concerned with bringing it forth.
I would understand that probably the ESC would be concerned about that, so I would share your concern as well. My impression with regard to the academy is that the academy is not funded that way. The Academy for Women and Girls, that's why I mentioned focusing on the Academy for Women and Girls and expanding it to boys and men. I can get the specifics for the final report on that, but that is not funded that way. They've also, I know that it's quite complex, as you've shed light on, Tawanda. They've also partnered with United Way. That was another one they mentioned. And their grant proposals and funding proposals written by other organizations, including CareerLink, which they have a great relationship with, my understanding, the ESC is mentioned. So anything that we might do I would agree with you, anything that we might do from a funding perspective will require more detailed examination of what is funded and what is not. And of course, that examination is not in this report.
And maybe a direct question that I would ask of them would be how how they could plan to leverage those dollars. So if there's programming that ESC has and is successful and wants to continue that serves youth age 14 to 18, right? That have a barrier, right? So that's the language that the Workforce Investment Board uses. And there's a provider or an organization that is holding that same program out at CareerLink. How could Employment Skills either partner or leverage those dollars so that folks don't have to travel out to CareerLink for programming that we want to keep in the borough? So
Right, and the ESC was quite clear, and I probably did not do the details justice in this report. This draft report was quite clear on not wanting to double fund, not wanting to expand mission beyond the mandate and to keep the relationships that they have, for example, with CareerLink, pure. So, and she made it very clear that they work, both organizations, CareerLink and ESC, work very hard to do that kind of deconfliction. Understanding it in the past, ESC received some monies, which she called outside agency funding. And she thought that for this Women and Girls Academy, the Success Academy, the fact that it's limited to women and girls is something that we've also seen at the chamber. That was really the focus, and we understand why. It's not a negative, but she believed that there is no funding available for that, and that the services that they provide are unique to the ESC. So, and I could get again more information on that. But these are. I realize we're starting to get into detail on the modalities, which this report is not about the modalities. It's more about recommending broad recommendations that we might consider in our final report rather than the modalities. The modalities would have to play a role as to whether the recommendation could be accepted. There has to be a way to do it. If you can't do it, if it's not actionable, then it would not be a great recommendation necessarily.
Right. So I guess my point in raising that is if even on the surface level that there is not necessarily a duplication of effort, but if there is, let's say there's a magical pot of money where our recommendations are going to come to this pot of money, and if there is money already allocated at the state level for something that we're asking to be done at a local level, then how can we leverage the state money
Right.
and still pursue and push forward the recommendation
Right.
without a price tag on it, but with an opportunity for partnership and
Sure.
leveraging the state dollars?
Sure. Yeah, makes sense.
Lou, I have a couple of questions. First of all, fantastic job on the report.
Thanks.
You may or may not know the answers to these questions. This was kind of just my mind spinning here. Does the Employment Skills Center do they make presentations at the high schools?
Yes. My understanding
It is not
is that
well
there-
publicized.
yes. Thank you. You just took the words out of my mouth. Not well known, not well publicized. My understanding is that there are workshops that they have been invited to and have attended, mainly in the business. And I'm not that yet familiar with Carlisle Area School District, but I guess there's a business curriculum. So the folks that are interested in business, right? These workshops are available. They've set up tables, I've told, and communicated what the ESC does and provided some training, mostly by volunteers. Most of the work is done by volunteers. And frankly, I thought they cut a pretty wide swath for.
Yeah, my concern with that is it sounds like they're going through the Center for Careers and Technology. That's just not targeted, but that's just a small, right, population of the entire high school population.
Which is the same as what I gather the financial literacy elective is also targeted similarly. And the initiative before the school board
Right.
is to make it mandatory for graduation for all students.
Yeah, and I may be wrong on this one, but I think that the ninth grade class this year is the first class that has to take it. So anyone afterwards, so that's great. But I just, yeah. Okay, so that was one question. We talked a lot, or you talked about how members of the Black community didn't necessarily want to come onto Hanover Street. And honestly, I think that's a trust issue that is going to take time, right?
Yeah.
A connection has to be created. There has to be a trust relationship there. So pushing that aside for the moment, would they consider going to the Black communities and saying on a almost like a rotating basis, you know, on the third Thursday of each month, we're going to go to the Stewart Community Center and we are going to make ourselves available. Sometimes you have to go to other people. You cannot wait for them to come to you. So
Yes.
just a thought.
Yeah, and I concur with that, and I probably should have been a bit more. I could have mentioned that, so I will circle back and mention that. ESC did make it clear that they had worked with Hope Station.
Mm-hmm.
In my notes, I do not have whether they actually went to Hope Station and did anything, or if it was something virtual, or,
Not during my tenure
or I don't
on the
know.
board.
But
Yeah.
I know that she had talked about Hope Station as something that they have. She's partnered with the director of Hope Station. Her name escapes me now.
Mm.
She,
Sophronia Perry.
yes, Sophronia, Miss Perry. She mentioned her many times as a person she has talked with, but I do not know
What actually?
answer your question.
This again is just kind of a related question since we were talking about fees. What are the fees for people to come to farmers market on Wednesdays? You know,
I don't know.
is that run
That's
by the
run by
borough?
DCA.
Ah, I was just wondering it. You know, and we have some diverse vendors there, but it would be nice to get some more.
It's a good idea. I'll write that down. See if I can find out.
Mm-hmm. And you know, regarding Black-owned businesses, and this is just kind of my own 2 cents, if you will. You know, there's that old Kevin Costner movie, Field of Dreams. I know I'm like totally aging myself on this one. Okay, if you build it, they will come, right?
Sure.
If you build something that a diverse community really wants to invest in, they will come. Like, for example, you know, I have family in Maryland. I have family in Pittsburgh. You know, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of, Lou, you may have Busboys and Poets,
Sure.
right? Something like, for those of you who don't know, Busboys and Poets, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Lou, but I believe it is a Black-owned business. They really do focus on selling diverse or books from diverse authors, which I'd love to see, right? They have a menu, you know, that is just, again, it appeals to a diverse audience. And so, again, this is just kind of my commentary, if you will, but I think that if we can attract businesses that really will speak to the BIPOC community, they will come. We will come. I will come.
Yes, I would agree with that too. DSC spoke in the chamber too, frankly, about doing a better job messaging and selling, marketing, and the like. Those areas are, my understanding, the most underfunded. If you have a choice between marketing what you do and actually doing it, you do it. And ESC often relies on word of mouth. Their nursing assistant program, for example, is known at the state level. It is that good. And they have metrics on who comes into their door, who leaves, who gets trained, and people come from all over. And they don't spend a lot of money advertising. It's through word of mouth. So, and I don't want to I'm not going to give away much about that, but that's a big deal that we're going to hear more about if things go well with the ESC. The bittersweet part of that is when things are successful, as successful as that nursing assistant program to ESC, they can tend to take over everything. And you lose the little support that you have for some of the other initiatives. You can't necessarily afford to continue to support them because now you've got this big initiative, this big program that needs constant feeding and it's getting constant attention at the state level. The ESC is very close to that kind of thing. I have not met with CareerLink. I think we should probably try that if we can get that done too, because I think that's something that we would be remiss if we didn't speak with them directly as well and get their perspectives. Yeah.
If I may, just a few things. One, I was quickly able to Google the application fee for the Farmers on the Square for the 34-week season is $600. Bi-weekly, you can do as a half-season vendor bi-weekly for $330, and then you can request specific days, and that's $40 per day.
Thank you.
Two, I think it might be. I know you have only so much time and energy, but I think CADIC would be a valuable discussion. They're a frequent enough partner with the borough, and they're housed downstairs, so
Okay.
so you don't have too far to go. And I know we've worked on a number of initiatives over the years with them. Three, my law firm, one of the attorneys in my law firm is a solicitor for the South Central Workforce Development Board. So they go by SCPA Works online. That's how they're branded. And they fund and coordinate the CareerLink. So if you want some contacts there to talk about their overall mission and different programs that they have, because CareerLink isn't the only program, of course, I can put you in touch with somebody if you're
I
interested.
would
in that.
appreciate that, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor, very much. Thank you.
Okay, sure. You're welcome.
This has been a great preliminary discussion of these elements of our ultimate report. We'll return to them in due time. Is there anything urgent that anyone else would like to add before we move on to the next item? Okay, the next item is actually, I should have had two Arabic numerals here. We need to discuss the form for community engagement support. Last time we gathered, we talked about how, kind of in keeping with some of the themes of Lou and Jerry's report, we need to be more transparent about how things work. So if you want support for something, we want to begin by walking the talk and sort of making it obvious to everyone how you come to this commission and to Borough to get support for the kinds of things that we have agreed we'd like to support. So Raz, I think, worked on a form for us, and then when we're done with discussing that, we'll turn our attention back to Doreen's HBCU HSI event. Oh, and Jerry, working together on that.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. And so I did draft up a form. I don't think I've sent it to everyone though. Is that right? So that'll be my next order of business, but I do have that drafted.
Great. Perfect. I think in the meantime, so we'll expect that at the October meeting, or in advance through email. We can have a look at it.
Expected by the end of this meeting.
Oh, okay. Hey, overachiever here. Great. So we'll have something to discuss next time we get together. In the meantime, let's go ahead and talk about the HBCU HSI event.
So things are going rather well. We are on target. We're working with the school districts to get their permission slips out. That's a process, having been there. So just, continue to share the word. I do have a quick question, though. If we're going to wait until October to approve that, the fair is October 6th, and I wanted to apply for funds.
I think we're kind of showing some flexibility in the early stages here, and we'll consider you kind of part of the piloting process as we develop the form. So this will be a good test case. We know for one thing, we know we're looking for a dollar amount that you're requesting and a kind of breakdown of that. So is everyone comfortable with the idea of considering this event our kind of pilot event to see how the forum works? And then, so you won't have to wait. We can kind of approve, but then kind of fine tune and get a more finalized version of the forum after that.
Do you want the amount now?
Do you have it?
1,200.
Okay.
Yes.
So do we want to, could you tell us a little bit about what the $1,200 is funding, and are we comfortable taking a vote on that this evening?
So I know Jerry can back me up on this. A lot of our money, of course, is going to food, as we are providing free breakfast and lunch to all students, as well as college reps. We have had some donors, of course. PNC Bank of Camp Hill, they provided bags for us, but we also want to provide some other things for the students as they go throughout the day to be able to record information, etc. We also didn't really have an advertising budget, I'll be very honest, right? So some of that will also go towards advertising as we get closer to the event. We have reached out to the news stations and whatnot, but there's just honestly more that we could do if we had a little bit of money. But the bulk of that is food.
And you
Yeah.
didn't you also say that we had a little outstanding that you wanted to gift, or not gift, but give to presenters? Yes. That was kind of where we're at.
You were here for a reason. Yes.
The amount to give to presenters, are you mean the different colleges that come?
No, not reps. So one of the things I can tell you I've learned throughout this process is that most college fairs actually charge college reps to yes, which kind of blows my mind a little bit. We did not. So, that's their gift, that they don't have to write a check to us, right? We may change that in the future, but that is their gift. I'm talking about for the sessions. So we have presenters for each session. For example, we have a wonderful lady coming from FIA to talk about scholarships and FAFSA and the Black College application. We have some counselors coming to work individually with students. We have the executives. This came in today, so I'm thrilled. The executive secretary for the CEO of UPMC is going to come and kind of do a quick 15-minute talk. And she said she has a really unique experience with HBCUs. We also, of course, have sessions on social life, on Greek life. We're even going to talk a little bit about budgeting money.
I don't know why
College-
these kids sound this bad.
College students can't usually do it very well. I'm speaking from experience from my child. So those are just some examples. I just want to just say thank you. This has been a labor of love. This has been a long process. And we started with, when I say we started with $0, I mean we started with $0. So every little bit truly helps. So thank you.
Make a motion that Truth and Reconciliation Commission give a donation toward the HBCU fair of $1,200.
Chair Stallworth has moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Werdebuck seconds. Is there any discussion?
Just thank you again.
Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
I know. The closer we get to 50, the more emotional it gets.
It looks like the next thing on our agenda is new business. And do we have any new business, i.e., form, recommendation, buckets, any type of that new business? So then just looking at the schedule, and we'll talk future meetings down below, but because we have the event with Colleen Murphy on the 13th, and I'm thinking that's going to be at 6 o'clock if we're keeping in line with the other thinking about race Thursdays. At one time, we had thought that that would take place of our October meeting, having skipped-ish the meeting earlier in the year. I'm guessing we want to keep October 10th and then still have the event with Colleen Murphy on the 13th. Is that a general consensus?
I think. My daughter's participated in a summer bridge program through Bible Way Church, and a gentleman named Michael Eskridge, and they have a presentation that I believe that they will be bringing to the next meeting. So I hate to schedule or not schedule a meeting all on behalf of one group looking to present. Pastor Reverend Woodall and this Michael Eskridge, I do believe, will be attending if the meeting on the 10th does go through. They'd like to present what it is that they're doing, what they've already done this past summer at the elementary school level, and what their plans are itemized going forward.
To present at Truth and Reconciliation?
Yep, they're going to come here. Be in person. Is that allowed?
Yeah, we can talk a little bit more offline. Yeah. No, I might not really understand what the presentation is about. That's all.
They basically just wanted to let us know what it is that they accomplished in this past summer and what their plans are going forward and how it ties in with the community and the work with underserved people.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
So we just wanted to talk.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you're saying that they're planning on coming on the 10th, so it'd be great if we could keep that meeting.
I let them know that we have a meeting each month and that they
Gotcha.
should plan on attending the next one if they wanted to talk.
Gotcha.
Sorry for any confusion.
No, all good. You know how we go. So it sounds like it's the consensus. We'll keep the 10th and we'll have the 13th. I thought you were saying you were coming to present to Borough Council. That's why I was confused.
Oh.
I'm good. All right. Now's the time where we can have some public comment.
May I interject just for
Sure.
a moment? How are we planning on advertising the 13th? Getting the word out to the public for
So I think you, Raz, and myself will
Are
take
gonna get
that on
together.
as the thinking about race. And
'cause,
anybody
yeah,
else
that
that's
does fall
interested.
under my.
What's that?
Okay.
Anybody else that's interested, get in touch with Raz, and then he'll pull us together pretty quickly, probably to turn that around. And then usually borough staff can help with some marketing and getting that out, getting the word out, and possibly a press release. I don't know. We'll see. All right, public comment. Anybody here? Anybody online? Fantastic. Updates. Oh, we skipped. Mayor?
You're allowed to go out of order. You're the co-chair.
Thanks.
The only update I know we've brought up the borough's budget before. Staff has been diligently working on that. I got a question, I think it was last week, that I wasn't sure how to answer from the borough manager, and the question was, what should we put in the budget for TRC for 2023? Now, this is a budget for the commission's operations, not for initiatives and recommendations. I, at the time, told her let's just use what we have presently as the placeholder for next year. Preferably, we'd know that, especially since you're going to have the October 10th meeting. If there's any thought on deviating from that in any way, it would be helpful to know that by then. So nothing I need an answer or discussion on right now. Just need some thought on it between now and October 10th.
Maybe it's helpful if we add to the October agenda a discussion or conversation about the future of this group, even though it is a part of some recommendations that'll come forth. But I think it's helpful to have that conversation publicly and together.
Right, that's exactly why I figured it was up in the air. So, because I knew there could be something about the ongoing role of this body that there may be a need for a budget. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Guess we'll circle back to the public comment. All right, so then in keeping with what we mentioned earlier about the October 10th meeting and the October 13th, thinking about race, also want to help us to remember that that's also Indigenous Peoples Day. So we might want to think about that as we move forward. And any other announcements?
Hey, quickly, just one I remembered. The Partnership for Better Health is putting on a series of events called the Health Equity Dialogues. It's going to be at the library here in town. There's one September 15th, 22nd, and 29th. So if you want any more information on it, I'm going to the one on the 22nd, not as a TRC representative, but that one's on food access. Also one on the 29th on housing, though. So I think some topics that are rather interesting. If you want more information, just let me know.
Any other announcements? Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. At 7:12, I declare this meeting adjourned.